Kelly Ford is my name. My age is 32. This year, the sky was totally dark, and my workplace was only lit by the lights inside the store. On the wall was an old-fashioned clock that read 9 o'clock p.m. from the restaurant's main floor. The sound of dishes and laughter could still be heard from a few surviving groups of patrons. Within 6 months of launching, my third restaurant, Alma, had gained popularity among local gourmets. A local food magazine arrived today and was spread out on my desk. The article titled Entrepreneur of the Year, Kelly Ford, appeared on that page. I was laughing in the kitchen with the cooks in the picture. I reminded myself, just a little longer. I went through the accounting book and glanced at my brother Dylan's monthly financial report. I let out a little sigh as I checked each number. For 4 years, Dylan had been in charge of my company's accounts. It was more of a familial duty than a business choice to hire him. He majored in finance in college, but for some reason, he was never able to get a steady employment. I gave him a chance at my parents' insistence. Since I was young, the way we were treated in the house was clearly different. The reason was because Dylan was the eldest son. My parents never doubted that he was a special child, despite him being mediocre at best and more often below average in everything. Growing up with such parental expectations, he had high pride. As I achieved success through effort and began to attract attention, he became jealous. My parents always attended his baseball games but never showed up at my club's concerts, saying they were busy. At his high school graduation, they probably took photos of him, despite his below-average grades. On the other hand, I graduated as valedictorian, and my father's only comment was, "You should have tried harder in sports." Dylan said, "You're just lucky," refusing to acknowledge my skills. After high school, when I decided to go to culinary school to pursue cooking, my parents objected. "We can't afford your tuition on top of Dylan's," my mother said. At the same time, they were happily paying for his expensive private university tuition. But I didn't give up. I earned a scholarship to attend a prestigious culinary school and trained under renowned chefs. While attending school, I'd also worked part-time at restaurants. It allowed me to earn money and study cooking and management. When I opened my first restaurant, I relied only on a bank loan and my savings. There was no financial help from my parents. Now I own 3 restaurants and am a known figure in the local culinary world. Ironically, I am now Dylan's employer. When he quit his third job, my parents said, "Dylan's talents can't be showcased in a regular company. He has special talents, Kelly. Let him help at your shop." I couldn't refuse and reluctantly gave him a chance for being family. But in reality, his abilities were significantly lacking. Though Dylan seemed to have mixed feelings about my success, I kept silent to maintain peace. As I was going through the last page of the financial report, there was a knock on the door. "Come in," I said. Jenny peeked her face in. She was the manager of Alma and my right-hand woman. "Kelly, can I go home now? The last customers have left." "Yes, of course. Thank you for today, Jenny." She nodded with a smile. "The reservations are full tomorrow. Looks like a good weekend ahead." "That's great. Have a good weekend yourself." After Jenny left, I closed the financial report and put it in my bag. I would review it in detail at home tonight. Something was nagging at me. Dylan's work had been suspicious lately. Mistakes were increasing, and so were his excuses. Stepping outside, the cold November wind caressed my cheeks. Under the restaurant sign, I turned back and smiled contentedly. This was the fruit of my efforts. I wouldn't let anyone disturb it. That weekend, I continued to go through the financial report. Something was wrong. There were discrepancies in the numbers and several unclear transactions. They had started with small amounts but had grown larger recently. My cell phone rang, and the screen showed a call from my cousin Megan. "Hello, Megan. It's been a while." "Kelly, how are you?" Megan's voice sounded cheerful. "Yes, I was just working. Is something wrong?" "I thought I'd see you at Dylan's wedding last week, but I heard you couldn't make it because of sudden work." I froze. "What are you talking about? Last weekend's wedding?" "It was a small ceremony, but it was lovely. Just Dylan and Candace, and close family and friends. Last weekend, I was at a loss for words. I had been told that Dylan's wedding was next weekend. What's wrong? Megan asked curiously. No, it's nothing. Thank you, Megan. Let's meet again. I hung up the phone in a daze. I had to check immediately. When I called my mother, she responded right away. Hello, Kelly. Mom, was Dylan's wedding last weekend? I heard it was next weekend. Oh, that. Did we tell you it was next week? It seems Dylan got the date wrong. That was a lie. I felt anger burning inside me. Out of all the relatives, you only told the wrong date to me. You don't have to say it like that. Besides, it's not a big deal. There was a forced concern in my mother's voice. She must have known. Both my brother and my parents must have known, and they intentionally excluded me. I'll send you the photos. It was a very nice ceremony, she continued. Seconds later, photos arrived on my phone. Dylan and his new wife, Candace, along with our parents and relatives, were all dressed formally and smiling happily. My father raised his wine glass, and my mother embraced the newlyweds. It looked like a perfect family portrait, except for the fact that I was the only one missing. Nice, I said coldly. Right? Dylan made such a wonderful speech. It's rare to see him so emotional. Mom, why didn't you tell me? I finally asked. Kelly, I told you Dylan got the date wrong. That's not what I mean. Why didn't you contact me right away when I didn't show up? Why was I the only one excluded? Silence flowed on the other end of the phone. Then my father began to speak. Kelly, you're always so dramatic. This is a trivial matter. We didn't intentionally exclude you. A trivial matter? My voice rose. It was Dylan's wedding, Dad. You're always busy, right? Always full with work. We just didn't want to take your time. At that moment, I understood clearly. They had always excluded me. My success must have seemed like a threat to them. Dylan was working for me discontentedly and mocked me by intentionally excluding me. Mom, Dad, that's enough, I said quietly. What do you mean, that's enough? Enough. I'm sick of your lies. I've always been treated as an outsider in this family. I've tolerated it until now, but I'm done. Kelly, you're overreacting. We love you. I scoffed. Love means respecting the other person. You've never once respected me or my choices. My father's voice turned cold. You always want special treatment. Dylan is our eldest son, and of course, we would celebrate his wedding. He's always been helping us. Have you forgotten about the money I sent? What are you talking about? I'll let your mother talk now. It was my mother's turn. The money you sent, that's the money Dylan manages for us. How do you think we would have paid the house mortgage without him? I was stunned. Dylan's managing it? What does that mean, Mom? What are you talking about? The money Dylan sends us every month. Didn't he tell you he's managing your company? You're just one of the chefs, so you don't know about the management. Suddenly, everything connected. The unclear transactions in the financial report, the numbers that didn't add up, Dylan's recent behavior. I had been sending money to my parents every month. This had continued for several years since my business started to get on track. It was around the time I began employing Dylan, and I had asked him to make the transfers. However, he had been stealing money from my company and sending it to my parents under his own name. Mom, Dad, there's nothing more to discuss. I hung up the phone. At that moment, something inside me changed. This wasn't just family hurt. It was a betrayal. Dylan had betrayed my trust, and my parents had believed his lies. I opened the financial report again. This time, I looked at it from a different perspective. Payments to customers, fictitious expenses, withdrawals under the guise of management fees. Dylan had been systematically stealing money from the company. Moreover, the amount suggested that he was pocketing more than just what was sent as remittances to our parents. I took a deep breath and called my lawyer. It's an emergency, I said. Can we meet tomorrow? The next morning, I arrived at the office early. I wanted to gather evidence before Dylan arrived. I logged into the accounting system and downloaded all transaction history for the past year. I could hear Jenny preparing in the main floor. By 9 o'clock a.m., the staff had begun to arrive, one after another. At 9:30 a.m., Dylan showed up, as usual. He was late. He entered the office with a confident smile, holding a coffee in his hand. "Good morning, Kel." He used my childhood nickname. It had always had a somewhat mocking tone. "Good morning, Dylan," I responded calmly. "Congratulations on your wedding. It sounds like it was a lovely ceremony." He paused for a moment, then quickly covered it up. "Ah, thanks. You heard from Mom, huh? Why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged. "I thought I did. Looks like I got the date mixed up. It's not a big deal, right?" "Not a big deal." I looked at him incredulously. "It was your wedding." "See, this is why I didn't tell you." He took a sip of his coffee. "You always get so dramatic." "Dramatic? Dallin, I'm your sister. I thought I was part of the family." "Of course you are," he said mockingly. "But honestly, Candace didn't want a big wedding. She wanted to celebrate just with people who are close to us." "Close to you?" I interrupted. "I'm not close to you." "It's not like that." He was searching for excuses. "You're always busy with the restaurant, aren't you?" I pulled out documents from the desk drawer. "I've been busy, but I've been watching the finances of the company, especially since I've been thinking something's been off recently." Dallin's expression changed. "What are you talking about?" "Ever since you came here 2 years ago, $500 has been withdrawn from the company every month under management fees." "That's just an expense," he said nonchalantly. "I thought so too at first, but in the past few months, an additional $11,000 has been withdrawn every month. The amount is too large, so I was checking it. Then the non-existent consultant fees. $2,000 every month and fictitious receipts." Dylan opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Mom said you were sending money every month," I continued. "Dylan, you must have been sending the money I was supposed to send to our parents as your own. If that's the case, you've stolen money from this company." "Stealing? That's ridiculous." His voice rose. "I work for this company. This is part of my compensation." "Compensation?" I said, trying to contain my anger. "Your salary is already above market rate, and lately you're hardly working at all. That money is for the family. I thought Mom and Dad needed more than what you were sending. Why didn't you just tell me directly? Why did you lie?" "You don't understand anything," Dallin stood up. "Always perfect, Kelly, always successful, always right. What have you ever done for the family? I hired you even though you had no qualifications or experience." "You mean out of pity," he scoffed. "I'm not so down and out that I need your pity." "But you wanted my money, even if it meant stealing it." At that moment, his face turned red. "I didn't steal anything." "You're fired," I said quietly. "Pack your things and leave now." "What? You can't fire me. We're family." "No, I can, and I will." I stood up and handed him a document. "This is a legal notice. If you do not return the misappropriated funds, I will take legal action." Dallin stared at the document in shock. "Are you serious about suing me?" "You've betrayed me, Dylan. You stole from the company, lied to our parents, and excluded me from one of the most important events of my life." "That's not true." "Leave before I call security," I said calmly. Dylan clutched the documents with trembling hands. As he turned toward the door, he sneered. "Perfect Kelly, forever alone Kelly. Ever wonder why? Because no one wants to be around someone as cold as you." As the door closed behind him, I collapsed into the chair. My hands were shaking. This was not just a dismissal. I had cut ties with my family. Yet, strangely, I felt a sense of liberation. No more lies or betrayals to deal with. No more being trapped in an endless loop of expectations and disappointments. I took out my cell phone and messaged my lawyer. Proceed. That evening, the restaurant was fully booked. I stayed in the kitchen longer than usual, cooking alongside the chefs. By engaging my hands and pouring my creative energy into the work, I tried to calm the turmoil inside me. After closing, I drank wine with the remaining staff and listened to their stories. I didn't tell them the truth. I only said that Dylan had left for personal reasons. When I got home, there was an unfamiliar car parked in front of my house, and there was a figure sitting on the bench in front of my house. It was Dylan. "What are you doing here?" I asked as I got out of the car. He stood up, his face twisted with anger, his eyes burning with rage. "Finally back, huh?" He crossed his arms and spoke with a domineering attitude. "There's nothing left to talk about." I took out my keys and headed for the door. "Kel," he shouted in a commanding tone. "Look at me. It's your duty to listen to me." I stopped and turned around. What should I listen to? More lies? More excuses? It was a mistake. He raised his voice. "It was for a debt. It became a problem because you overreacted." "A debt?" I laughed. "You stole from the company." "Dylan, shut up." He pointed a finger at me. "What do you know? I needed the money for my marriage to Candace. It's only natural for family." "Then why didn't you tell me? I'm your sister. You could have honestly asked for help." "You think I would beg from you?" He snorted. "That's just like you always flaunting your success, looking down on me. Our parents expected it from me. It was me. I was the one to save the family." "So you stole my money and sent it to our parents as your own?" "It was my right." He pounded his chest. "You gave me a job. How gracious. Half of your success is thanks to me. Then why did you exclude me from your wedding?" "Ah, that again." He waved dismissively. "The wedding was just a ceremony. If you had been there, everything would have been ruined. You always get all the attention when relatives gather." "Always." His words stung sharply, but it was the truth. At family gatherings, I was rightfully recognized for my achievements. Everyone noticed the success I had earned through my own efforts. I knew that my parents and he resented that. "Does Candace know what you've done?" "What did you tell her?" His face was momentarily stricken with panic. "Nothing," I answered quietly. "Not yet. She'll believe me no matter what you say." He stepped closer threateningly. "I've told her I'm your business partner in the company. That's a fact." "What? Your restaurant is partly mine," he stated proudly. "What's wrong with saying that?" "Unbelievable," I sighed. "You've built everything on lies." "Kelly," he commanded, "take me back. I need the job right now. It's your duty as my sister." "Why? Why really?" He scoffed. "If Candace finds out the truth, she'll leave me. She was attracted to my status." "Afraid the truth will come out," I said coldly. "That's unfortunate, but I will never give you anything again." "What?" His face flushed and he clenched his fists. "Is this what a sister does?" "The conversation is over," I said as I opened the door. "Return all company property by tomorrow. Security will be present when you come to the office." "You're going to regret this," he threatened. "Just go," I said. "This is a goodbye." Dylan glared at me for a few seconds before kicking the ground violently. "To be treated like this," he muttered as he started walking briskly towards his car. He opened the door roughly, turned back, and yelled, "We're family. You betrayed that." "We were," I replied and quietly closed the door. The car engine roared aggressively, and the tires screeched as he drove away. The next morning, I sent a concise message to my parents. I explained that Dylan had stolen money from the company and sent it to them under his own name, that he had intentionally excluded me from his wedding, and that I could no longer continue my relationship with the family. There was no reply from my parents. That night after sending the message, I couldn't sleep. What is a family? Is it just about blood ties, or is it a relationship built on trust and respect? The next day, my mother called. "Kelly, I'm calling about Dylan." Her voice was weary. "What's happened?" I asked calmly. "He's in a terrible state. Candace has left him after finding out the truth. He's out of money and out of a job." "That's unfortunate," I said, "but that's the result of his own choices." "How can you be so cold to him?" My mother's tone was accusatory. "He's your brother." "Mom, he stole from me. He put my company and reputation at risk. And for years he intentionally excluded me." Everyone makes mistakes, Kelly. Mistakes? I chuckled bitterly. This wasn't just a mistake. It was deliberate betrayal. He needs help, my mother pleaded. Can't you give him a job? No, my voice was firm. Kelly Ford. My mother raised her voice. How do you think I raised you? Families are supposed to help each other. I won't help him anymore, Mom. That's my final decision. There was silence on the line for a few seconds, then her voice turned cold. I understand. If that's how you feel, you're no longer part of this family. Those words hurt, but they were not unexpected. If that's your choice, I said quietly goodbye. Mom hung up. The pain was less than I had anticipated. Instead, I felt a strange peace. It was as if I had been freed from the burdens of family expectations and disappointments that had plagued me for years. That conversation was the last. I blocked my parents' numbers after that. Weeks passed. My life became quieter. I received no more communications from my parents. While I occasionally thought of them, the pain that used to accompany those thoughts was gone. Work has been going well. Thanks to the new financial manager, the company's finances were organized and more transparent. I was finally able to move forward with plans to open a fourth restaurant. One day, while I was working in my office, Jenny knocked on the door. Kelly, do you have a moment? She seemed a bit nervous. Of course. What's up? She hesitated before speaking. Someone's outside. He wants to see you. Who? Your brother. I froze. Dylan? Jenny nodded. I wasn't sure whether to let him in. I took a deep breath. Do you know what he wants? No, he just said he needs to talk to you. I considered the situation. Should I see Dylan? What if he was here to ask for something again? Yet turning him away without seeing him might not resolve anything for me either. All right, I decided. Let him in. When Dylan entered, he looked different. Gone was his usual confident demeanor, replaced by a man who appeared exhausted. Kelly, he said weakly. Dylan, I responded calmly. What do you want? He stood, even though I gestured toward a chair. There's something I need to talk about. I need help, he said. I had observed him. Dylan only ever appeared before me when he needed something, more money or some other favor. In a quiet voice, Dylan said, Candace left me. That's unfortunate, I said. He looked out the window. Mom and Dad have abandoned me too. Can you believe it? After everything I've done, they haven't contacted me. They're ashamed of their actions until now, I explained, especially Dad. He read an article about you recently and said he was proud. I said nothing. Well, forget about the money. I just need someone to listen, he rushed to add. I have a new plan. This time it's going to be a big profit. So let's just let bygones be bygones and help me out. Dylan, I interrupted him. Why did you come here? He took a deep breath. Obviously, I want to come back to work. None of this would have happened if you hadn't overreacted. I looked at him steadily. There was not a trace of regret in his eyes. That's not possible, I said. First, you need to get treatment for your anger issues and narcissism problems you've had since you were a child. What? His face stiffened momentarily. That's nonsense. He snapped. Anger issues? Don't make me laugh. Is that so? I said. It's none of your business. He suddenly raised his voice. You always look down on me. You think I have problems. I am perfect. It was the usual pattern whenever his pride was wounded. He lost his composure. At that response, I was at a loss for words. You have an obligation to rehire me, he said commandingly. With a tone full of contempt, my sister Victoria said, your children simply don't fit in with our social circle, while adjusting her pearl necklace. The country club has certain standards, and honestly, Emma, it would be embarrassing for everyone involved. I was standing in her foyer with a marble floor, holding the birthday invitation that my daughter Hannah had inadvertently received. We were included in the mailing for her son Lax's 16th birthday party, which was sent by Victoria's new housekeeper, who was unaware of the family rules. Standards. I said again, maintaining my composure in spite of my mounting rage. They are your niece and nephew, Victoria. She sighed loudly as she looked at her manicured nails. They don't belong here, family or not. I mean, observe their manners and attire. They're simply so. She dismissively waved her hand. Common. My name is Emma Sullivan, and at 42, I never imagined I'd be standing in my sister's mansion, listening to her explain why my children weren't good enough to attend their cousin's birthday party. But here we were worlds apart. Despite growing up in the Singh household, Victoria had always been the successful one in our family's eyes. She'd married Richard Hamilton, heir to the Hamilton real estate empire, while I'd chosen to marry Tom, a high school teacher who made me laugh and treated me like I was his whole world. According to our parents, I'd married beneath my potential. Hannah spent weeks making Blake a birthday card, I said quietly, pulling the handmade creation from my purse. My 16-year-old daughter had poured her heart into it, using her artistic talents to create something special for the cousin she rarely got to see. Victoria barely glanced at it. That's sweet, she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. But we've already arranged for a professional photographer and a social media team. Everything needs to be perfect. Perfect. That word had haunted our childhood. Victoria had always strived for it, while I'd learned to find beauty in imperfection. Our parents had reinforced this divide, praising her achievements while viewing my choices with barely concealed disappointment. Mom, a voice called from the sweeping staircase. My nephew Blake appeared, looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit. Is that Aunt Emma? Before he could come down to greet me, Victoria intercepted. Blake, darling, you're going to be late for your golf lesson. The car's waiting. I watched as my nephew hesitated, then nodded obediently. He shot me an apologetic look before disappearing through the front door. The glimpse of genuine emotion in his eyes gave me hope that maybe he hadn't completely absorbed his mother's values. You see, Victoria continued once he was gone. We've worked hard to give Blake the right connections, the right opportunities. Your children, well, they just wouldn't understand this world. The world she spoke of was one of country club memberships, a summer home in the Hamptons, and social hierarchy so rigid it made my head spin. A world where worth was measured by bank accounts and family names rather than character and kindness. My children understand more than you think, I replied, packing Hannah's card back into my purse. They understand loyalty, compassion, and the value of hard work, things that can't be bought with your husband's money. Victoria's perfectly composed face cracked slightly at my words. Don't be bitter, Emma. It's not becoming. As if you chose this life when you married that teacher. The way she said teacher made it sound like a terminal illness. I thought about Tom, who stayed up late grading papers and spent his weekends helping students who needed extra support, who coached the school's debate team without extra pay because he believed in giving kids a voice. Yes, I did choose this life, I said proudly, and every day I'm grateful for that choice. Victoria rolled her eyes. Well, that's your prerogative, but you can't expect your choices not to have consequences. Blake's party is going to be featured in the local society pages. We can't have anything inappropriate. Inappropriate? Like my daughter's handmade card? Like my son Michael's scholarship to the state university, rather than a legacy admission to an Ivy League school. Like the fact that we live in a modest house and drive cars that are more than 2 years old. You know what's inappropriate, Victoria? I finally snapped. Teaching your son that his family's worth is measured by their bank accounts. That's the real embarrassment. She straightened, her face hardening. I think it's time for you to leave. The housekeeper made a mistake with the invitation, and I've clearly wasted enough time explaining why you and your children don't belong here. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of a family photo on the wall. It was from 20 years ago, before Victoria married Richard, before money and status became her religion. In it, we were laughing, our arms around each other, not a designer or society page in sight. What happened to you, Victoria? I asked softly, gesturing to the photo. When did you become someone who would exclude her own family because they're not rich enough? For a moment, something flickered in her eyes regret, perhaps, or a glimmer of the sister I used to know, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her usual cold disdain. People change, Emma, she said. Some of us evolve, move up in the world. Others, she looked me up and down, remain exactly where they started. The drive home was a blur of emotions. I kept thinking about Hannah's face when she received that invitation, how she'd immediately started working on the card, excited to connect with her cousin. How was I going to tell her that her aunt had deemed us too poor, too common to attend? When I pulled into our driveway, I saw Tom working in our small vegetable garden, something Victoria would probably consider horrifyingly middle class. He looked up as I got out of the car, his smile fading when he saw my expression. "That bad, huh?" he asked, wiping his hands on his jeans as he came to meet me. I fell into his arms, letting out a shaky breath. She said we'd embarrass them, that we don't fit their social standards. Tom held me tighter, his voice gentle but firm. Then it's their loss. Our kids are amazing, and if Victoria and her country club friends can't see that, they're the ones missing out. Inside, I found Hannah at the kitchen table, surrounded by her art supplies. She was working on another project, her face serene with concentration. Michael was beside her, textbooks spread out as he studied for his upcoming exams. They looked up when I entered, and in their faces, I saw everything Victoria had dismissed as common: intelligence, creativity, determination, and most importantly, kindness. "Mom?" Hannah asked, noticing my expression. "Did Aunt Victoria get my card for Blake?" I sat down at the table, reaching for her hand. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about the party." As I explained Victoria's decision, trying to soften the blow while still being honest, I watched their reactions. Hannah's face fell, then set in a determined line. Michael's jaw tightened, his hand finding his sister's shoulder in silent support. "So we're not good enough for them?" Hannah asked, her voice small but steady. "No, honey," I said firmly. "They're not good enough for us. Anyone who would judge family based on money and social status isn't worth our time." Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You know what's funny? Blake texted me last week asking for help with his chemistry homework. Guess being rich doesn't make you automatically good at science." This made Hannah smile slightly. He also liked my art post on Instagram before Victoria made him unfollow me. The fact that Victoria monitored and controlled her son's social media connections to maintain their perfect image made my heart ache. What kind of pressure was Blake under, trying to live up to his mother's impossible standards? That evening, as we sat down to our family dinner, homemade lasagna that would never appear on a country club menu, I looked at my children and felt a fierce pride. They might not have designer clothes or trust funds, but they had something far more valuable: character. "You know," Tom said as we cleaned up together, "maybe we should have our own party, invite the people who actually matter." Hannah's eyes lit up. "Can we?" "We could have it in the backyard, and I could make decorations." Michael grinned. "I could invite my debate team friends. They're way more interesting than stuck-up country club people anyway." And just like that, Victoria's rejection transformed into something positive. We spent the next hour planning our anti-country club gathering, laughing about serving hot dogs and hamburgers instead of caviar and champagne. But later that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but worry about the long-term impact of Victoria's actions. How would this affect my children's relationship with their cousin? Would they internalize this rejection? Despite our best efforts to show them it wasn't about their worth, Tom, sensing my concerns, pulled me closer. "They're stronger than you think," he whispered, "and they have a lot to remind them of what really matters." He was right, of course. Our children had grown up understanding the value of hard work, the importance of character over wealth, and the true meaning of family. Victoria might have her country club and society pages, but we had something far more precious: genuine love and acceptance. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a silent promise to my children. I would help them build their own definition of success, one that wasn't measured by bank accounts or social status. What I didn't know then was that someday would come sooner than any of us expected, and Victoria's carefully constructed world of privilege and prestige was about to crumble in ways none of us could have predicted. 6 months after Victoria's humiliating rejection, I was grading papers at my kitchen table when my phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips. Hamilton Real Estate Empire under federal investigation. CEO Richard Hamilton accused of massive fraud. My hands trembled as I clicked the link, scanning an article with growing disbelief. Richard, my brother-in-law, was accused of running a Ponzi scheme through his real estate developments. The investigation suggested he'd been defrauding investors for years, using new investments to pay returns to earlier investors while pocketing millions. Mom. Hannah called from the doorway. Is everything okay? You look pale. I looked up at my daughter, who had grown even more talented with her art over the past months. She channeled the hurt from Victoria's rejection into her work, creating pieces that spoke of resilience and authenticity. It's about Uncle Richard, I said quietly, turning my phone so she could see. He's in trouble. Hannah's eyes widened. Does this mean Blake and Aunt Victoria will probably lose everything? I nodded, my heart heavy. Despite everything, no matter how Victoria had treated us, the thought of her world crumbling around her brought me no joy. The story exploded across local media. Richard was arrested dramatically at his country club, in full view of the same social circle Victoria had been so desperate to impress. Their assets were frozen, their accounts seized, and their reputation shattered overnight. 3 days after the news broke, I was working our vegetable garden, the same one Victoria had once mocked as quaint, when a familiar car pulled into our driveway. It was Blake, driving what looked like one of the few vehicles the authorities hadn't confiscated. Aunt Emma, his voice cracked as he got out. Gone was the polished country club appearance. He looked tired, scared, and impossibly young. Can we talk? I led him inside, where Hannah and Michael were doing homework. They looked up in surprise, but their expressions quickly softened when they saw their cousin's distress. Mom won't get out of bed, Blake said, staring into the mug of hot chocolate I'd given him. The bank took the house. Her accounts are frozen, and Dad's lawyers say he's looking at serious prison time. He swallowed hard. I didn't know, Aunt Emma. I didn't know about any of it. I swear. Of course you didn't, I said gently, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. None of this is your fault. Blake looked at Hannah and Michael, his eyes filling with tears. I'm so sorry about the party, about everything. Mom, she always said we had to maintain certain standards. But now? He gestured helplessly. It was all fake. Everything was fake. Hannah moved to sit beside her cousin, while Michael pulled up another chair. Without a word, they formed a protective circle around Blake, showing him the family support he'd been denied the chance to experience before. Where are you staying? I asked, already knowing we had a spare room that could easily be converted for him. Some motel off the highway, Blake admitted. Mom said it was temporary, but she's not handling things well. She just lies there, staring at the wall. I think she's in shock. Tom, who had come home during our conversation, exchanged a look with me. We had our differences with Victoria, but she was still family, and right now her son needed help. Blake, Tom said, his teacher's voice gentle but firm, call your mom. Tell her you're both coming to stay with us until things get sorted out. Blake's eyes widened. But after how she treated you, how she treated Hannah and Michael? That's the thing about real family, I said, thinking of all Victoria's lectures about standards and social circles. We're there for each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Later that evening, I drove to the motel Blake had mentioned. Victoria's Mercedes was parked outside, looking out of place among the budget vehicles. I found her in room 115, lying on a bed that had seen better days, still wearing the designer outfit she had on when the authorities arrived at her door. Go away, Emma, she mumbled when I entered. I can't handle your gloating right now. I sat on the edge of the bed, taking in my sister's appearance. Her perfectly maintained facade had crumbled, leaving behind someone who looked lost and frighteningly vulnerable. I'm not here to gloat, I said quietly. I'm here to take you home. She laughed, a hollow sound that held no humor. Home? They took our home. They took everything. No, I corrected her. You have a home with us. It's not a mansion, and there's no country club membership, but it's real. And right now, that's what you and Blake need. Victoria turned to look at me, her mascara streaked across her cheeks. Why would you help me after how I treated you? Your children, I said simply, because that's what family does. The real kind of family, not the kind that judges based on bank accounts and social status. For a long moment, Victoria just stared at me. Then, slowly, she sat up. I don't deserve your help. Probably not, I agreed. But you're getting it anyway. Now pack your things. Blake's already at our house, probably eating Tom's famous spaghetti and meatballs with Hannah and Michael. As I helped my sister gather her belongings, designer clothes that now seemed like costumes from a former life, I thought about how quickly everything could change. 6 months ago, Victoria had stood in her marble foyer, declaring my children unfit for her social circle. Now that circle had turned its back on her, while the family she'd rejected was offering shelter. Emma, Victoria said as we walked to my car, her voice small and uncertain. I don't know how to live without all of this. I looked at my sister, seeing past the pearls and perfect makeup to the girl who used to share secrets with me under blanket forts. Then it's time to learn what really matters. And you've got family to help you figure it out. The adjustment period wasn't easy. Victoria, who had never made her own bed or cooked a meal, struggled with the basic routines of our household. The first morning, I found her staring at the coffee maker like it was an alien artifact. How do you survive without household staff? She asked, still wearing silk pajamas that cost more than our monthly grocery budget. We manage, I replied, showing her how to measure the coffee grounds. And you will too. Blake adapted more quickly than his mother. Within days, he was joining Michael for study sessions and helping Hannah with her art projects. The cousin bond that Victoria had tried so hard to prevent blossomed naturally, without the artificial barriers of social status. One evening, I overheard Blake talking to Hannah in the backyard. They were sitting on the old swing set, the same one Victoria had once called charmingly provincial, with that condescending smile of hers. You know what's weird? Blake said, kicking at the dirt beneath his feet. I feel more at home here than I ever did in our mansion, like I can just be myself. Hannah nodded, working on a sketch in her ever-present notebook. That's because nobody here expects you to be perfect. We just expect you to be real. Victoria's transformation was slower, but unmistakable. The designer clothes gradually gave way to borrowed sweaters and jeans. Her perfectly manicured nails chipped from helping with dishes, and her immaculate hair relaxed into natural waves. The breaking point came during a dinner, about 3 weeks into their stay. Victoria had insisted on cooking to contribute something. The result was a spectacularly burned attempt at lasagna that set off all the smoke alarms. Standing in the kitchen, surrounded by smoke, and the ruins of her culinary disaster, Victoria did something I hadn't seen in years. She laughed. Laughed, not the polite practice society laugh she perfected, but a real, genuine belly laugh that brought tears to her eyes. I can't even make dinner properly, she gasped between fits of giggles. What would the country club ladies say now? Tom ordered pizza, and we all sat around the table eating straight from the boxes, something that would have been unthinkable in Victoria's former life. As Blake told stories about his mother's previous attempts at domestic tasks, I saw my sister slowly letting go of the persona she maintained for so long. You know what the worst part is? Victoria said later that night, after the kids had gone to bed. We were sitting on the back porch, sharing a bottle of wine that cost a fraction of what she used to drink. All those people I tried so hard to impress, the ones I thought were my friends, they won't even take my calls now. I thought about all the times she chose those same people over family. Real friendship isn't based on bank accounts, Vic, she added, using the childhood nickname. I know that now. I just, I spent so long trying to be what Richard wanted, what his social circle expected. I forgot who I was before all that. The girl who used to help me catch fireflies, I suggested. The one who stood up to Bobby Thompson in third grade when he made fun of my glasses. Victoria smiled faintly. She seems like a stranger now. She's still in there, I assured her. And now you have the chance to find her again. The real breakthrough came when Hannah had her art show at the local community center. Victoria, who once would have considered such a venue beneath her, sat in the front row, beaming with genuine pride as her niece presented her work. One of Hannah's pieces was a portrait of our family, all of us, including Victoria and Blake. She captured Victoria's transformation beautifully, showing her with relaxed hair and a natural smile, surrounded by the family she'd once rejected. It's called coming home, Hannah explained to the small crowd. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find what really matters. I watched Victoria's eyes fill with tears as she stared at the portrait. In that moment, I saw my sister, my real sister, emerging from behind the walls she'd built around herself. Later that week, Victoria got a job at the local library. It wasn't glamorous, and the salary was a fraction of what she once spent on a single shopping trip. But she attacked it with determination. I need to learn how to stand on my own, she explained when I expressed surprise at her choice. And maybe help others find the stories they need like I'm finding mine. Blake flourished in his new environment too. Without the pressure to maintain a certain image, his grades improved, and he discovered a passion for environmental science, something his father would have dismissed as impractical. One evening, I found Victoria sorting through a box of old photographs in our living room. She held up one from our childhood, two girls with gaping smiles, arms around each other, not a care in the world. I want to be her again, Victoria whispered. Not exactly her, but someone who knows what really matters. Someone worthy of being called family. I sat beside her, looking at the photo. You're already on your way. 1 year after Victoria and Blake first arrived at our doorstep, our backyard was transformed for a very special celebration. Hannah's handmade decorations hung from every tree, strings of lights twinkled overhead, and tables covered in homemade food lined the garden fence. It was Blake's 17th birthday party, a far cry from the country club extravaganza Victoria had planned the year before. Instead of hired photographers and social media teams, there were genuine smiles and real laughter. You know what's funny? Blake said, helping Hannah hang the last of her art pieces on the fence. Last year, I was dreading my perfect party. Now this, he gestured at our modest backyard setup. This feels perfect. Victoria, wearing jeans and one of my old sweaters, was arranging cupcakes she baked herself. After multiple kitchen disasters and countless YouTube tutorials, she finally mastered the basics of baking. These weren't the designer cupcakes from her previous life, but they were made with love and only slightly lopsided. Need any help, Aunt Victoria? Michael asked, reaching for a cupcake, only to have his hand playfully swatted away. Not from someone who's going to eat all my hard work, she teased, her eyes twinkling. The formal Aunt Victoria had gradually given way to just Victoria, among the kids, a sign of the walls that had crumbled between us. Tom emerged from the house, carrying his famous homemade pizza, another dish that would never have appeared at the country club. Food's ready, he called, and everyone gathered around. The guest list was different too. Instead of society families and business connections, the yard was filled with real friends. Blake's science club members chatted with Hannah's art friends. Michael's debate team mixed with Victoria's co-workers from the library. Even some of our neighbors had stopped by, bringing dishes to share. Remember last year? Victoria said quietly, joining me on the porch steps. When I was so worried about appearances that I couldn't see what really mattered. I watched as Blake laughed at something Hannah said, his whole face lighting up. You've come a long way since then, I said. She nodded absently, touching the simple silver necklace she wore, a birthday gift from the kids to replace her lost pearls. I got a letter from Richard yesterday, she said. He wanted me to testify that I knew nothing about the fraud to help reduce his sentence. And I told him no. She squared her shoulders. I'm done pretending. Maybe I didn't know the details, but I chose to look the other way because I liked the lifestyle. It's time to face the truth. Just then, Blake called everyone together. He stood in the center of the yard, looking nervous but determined. Before we have cake, he announced, I want to say something. He looked around at the gathered faces. Last year, I thought I had everything, but really I had nothing that mattered. When we lost it all, that's when I found what real family means. He turned to Victoria. Mom, I know this year has been hard, but I'm proud of who you've become, who we've become. Victoria wiped tears from her eyes as Blake continued, and Aunt Emma, Uncle Tom, thank you for taking us in when we had nowhere else to go, for showing us what family really means. Hannah and Michael moved to stand beside their cousin. To real family, Hannah said, raising her glass of lemonade. To real family, everyone echoed. Later that evening, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Victoria helped me clean up the yard. I have some news, she said, carefully wrapping leftover cupcakes. The library is promoting me to head of children's programming. Victoria, that's wonderful, I exclaimed. It's not a fortune, she admitted, but it's enough. Blake and I found a small apartment nearby. I think it's time we stood on our own feet. I felt a twinge of sadness. Despite everything, I'd grown used to having them in our home. You know you're always welcome here, I said. I know. She hugged me tight. That's what makes it okay to leave, because I know we're not really leaving family behind. The next weekend, we all helped Victoria and Blake move into their new apartment. It was modest but bright, with space for Blake's science projects and a small balcony where Victoria planned to start an herb garden. Look what I found, Hannah said, pulling something from her art portfolio. It was the birthday card she'd made for Blake the year before the one Victoria had dismissed as inappropriate. Victoria took it with trembling hands. I was so wrong, she whispered, about everything. Not everything, Blake said, putting an arm around his mother. You learned what matters. We both did. That evening, we all squeezed around Victoria's small dining table for their first meal in the new apartment. The table settings weren't designer, the chairs didn't match, and the pasta was slightly overcooked. But looking around at the faces of my family, all of my family, I knew this was perfect in all the ways that mattered. I've been thinking, Victoria said, as we shared a slightly crooked chocolate cake she baked, about starting a program at the library for kids who love art, like Hannah. Maybe a place where they can display their work, regardless of their background. Hannah's eyes lit up. Really? Could I help? I'd love that, Victoria smiled. After all, you're the one who showed me that real art comes from the heart, not the wallet. As the evening wound down and we prepared to leave, Victoria pulled me aside. Emma, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Not just for taking us in, but for showing me who I could be. Who I should have been all along. That's what sisters are for, I replied, hugging her tight. 6 months later, Victoria's art program at the library had become a huge success. Hannah's work was featured prominently alongside pieces from kids who might never have had the chance to show their art otherwise. Blake had been accepted to the State University's environmental science program, the same university Victoria had once considered beneath their family status. And every Sunday, without fail, we all gathered for family dinner. Sometimes at our house, sometimes at Victoria's apartment. The food wasn't always perfect, the settings weren't fancy, but the love and laughter were real. After dinner one night, we were sitting in Victoria's little living room when I noticed the family portrait Hannah had made, which was now displayed with pride on the wall. There were no walls or pretenses between us, and we were all together with sincere smiles. You know what? Victoria replied as she followed my eyes. At last, I know what real riches is. It's not in country club memberships or bank accounts. It occurs during times like this. Blake looked up from where he was lying on the floor with Hannah and Michael, playing a board game. We're rich in all the ways that matter. He was correct. Victoria and Blake have acquired what they had always been lacking after losing all they believed they needed. We all became richer in love, understanding, and the real sense of family as a result of welcoming them into our household. It wasn't the life Victoria and Blake had ever dreamed of. It was superior. It was authentic.